whether the last person she saw before the camera was moved was the defendant.
It's a different question. Objection overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
So, Doctor, bringing you back to my question, the last person you saw on the footage before the camera was moved was the defendant. Yes or no?
Sure, on that footage. The problem was I couldn't see that whole bank.
But bringing you back to my question, the last person you saw on the footage before the camera was moved was the defendant. I'm just looking for a yes or no.
That's true.
Doctor, I want to talk about this access that you talked about in direct examination, right?
Sure.
You talked about the security company who might have a key to this bank, right?
The security company does have a key.
Doctor, you never examined the employee logs of that security company, do you?
That's not my job. That's the job of the FBI.
So that's a no, that you never examined the employee logs of that security company?
No, I stopped working for the FBI years ago.
So you don't know who works there?
Well, no, that's the problem. They were never investigated by the FBI. We don't know.
So you don't know the genders of the people who work there, right?
Well, no, we don't know anything. No means, no motive, no opportunity. We don't know.
You don't know if the people who work at that security company are all male, right?
I doubt it, but certainly it's a possibility.
But that's a no, that you don't know whether the people in that security company were all male. Yes or no?
Of course not. The FBI never investigated them.
Doctor, I want to talk about something you didn't consider in your investigation. You know that the robbers in this case all used a specific kind of cell phone, right?
I read that, yes.
It's a red flip phone?
Yes, I read that.
You'd recognize a picture of that flip phone if I were to show it to you, right?
Sure.
Let the record reflect that I'm approaching opposing counsel with Exhibit 6. It's been entered. And may I approach the witness with the same?
Yes.
Here you go, Doctor. Doctor, you agree with me that this looks exactly like the phone that the robbers were seen with in this robbery. Yes or no?
That's what I read in Agent James' report, yes.
Doctor, you didn't read the affidavit of Charlie Floyd, one of the robbers in this case, did you?
Of course not. I was auditing the investigation, so I was looking at Agent James' report.
So you didn't read Charlie Floyd's affidavit, that's a no?
Of course not. That's not what I was auditing. I was auditing the investigation.
So you don't know whether Charlie Floyd saw the defendant with a phone that looked exactly like this, right?
I didn't find evidence of that, no.
But you don't know whether Charlie Floyd saw the defendant with a phone that looked exactly like this, yes or no?
No, I didn't find evidence of that.
Doctor, you were paid $30,000 for your testimony and your work in today's case?
I wasn't paid for my testimony, no. I got my check months ago for preparing my report.
But you were paid $30,000 on that check, yes or no?
That's true.
Now, Doctor, you said you read the affidavit of Cassidy Sutton, one of the insider suspects, right?
Yes.
You tried to speak with Parker Barrow, the defendant, as well, right?
Of course. I always ask, but as you know, direct contact with the defendant is not common practice. I expected a no when I asked.
So, Doctor, just to be clear, you didn't just expect a no. Defense counsel barred you from speaking with the defendant, right?
Like I expected, so I noted that in my report.
But that's true that defense counsel barred you from speaking with the defendant, yes or no?
They didn't let me, yes. Standard practice.
You know that Parker Barrow was an insider suspect as well, right?
FBI did consider Parker Barrow, yes.
Thank you, Doctor. I have no further questions.
Thank you, counsel. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor. May Dr. Carvers be excused, and may I take down the chart?
The witness may step down and you can dismantle the demonstrative. Ms. Seberg, are you ready to call your last witness?
Yes, Your Honor, Yes, Your Honor, we call Parker Barrow to the stand.
Mr. Barrow, please come forward to testify. You've already been sworn.
May I proceed?
You may.
Please introduce yourself to the members of the jury.
I'm Parker Barrow.
Mr. Barrow, on October 30th of 2017, did you move the security camera at Third National Bank to face the ceiling?
No.
Well, on October 31st of 2017, did you purposely not call the police when you knew your bank was being robbed?
No, ma'am. I pressed the alarm.
leading up to the day of the October 31st. Did you need any money?
No, I was fine in that respect.
Mr. Barrow, can you explain how you came to work at Third National Bank?
Sure. When I graduated from high school, I was initially going to go off to the Rhode Island School of Design. I wanted to be a photographer. But the summer after I graduated high school, my dad actually suffered from a heart attack. Put things into perspective a little bit for me, and I decided I want to stay a little bit closer to home, make sure my parents are doing okay. So I did, and I went to community college for business instead. Hopped around from job to job for a little bit until I settled at Third National. I've been there for a couple years now.
How did you like working there?
I love it.
Well, I'd like to talk to you about the day of the robbery specifically, Mr. Barrow. Can you tell us how that day started for you?
Sure. It was a little bit different than a normal day. Normally on Tuesdays, Cassidy and I open the bank together, but today he was out for a dentist appointment, I think, so I was going to be opening the place by myself. I'm a little slow on the paperwork, I think, so probably took me a little bit longer to open than it normally takes Cassidy, but once I got the doors unlocked, the day seemed to go pretty normal, until Jackie came in.
What happened when Jackie got there?
Well, she came in to do her regular Tuesday morning deposit, and then all of a sudden, that's when it happened. I mean, these robbers burst through the door, and they're waving these guns around, and they're screaming that they're robbing the place.
Mr. Barrow, as an employee at Third National, have you been trained on how to react to a situation like this?
Yes, luckily we get a lot of training on this. From your first day, you're told that if a robber comes in, you do what they say, you press the alarm, and you remain calm. So that's exactly what I did. I mean, they were telling me to stuff this bag with cash, so I did. I was pressing that alarm over and over and over, just waiting for those cops to come.
Mr. Barrow, are you sure you pressed that alarm?
Yes, I mean, I had to tap that thing at least 50 times. I was just tapping and tapping and tapping until they showed up.
Did the police ever come?
Yes, after what was probably a minute or two, the police finally showed up, and they got the robbers, and they got Jackie's money back, and I mean, I felt like I did it.
Objection, Your Honor.
Yes.
Lack of personal knowledge that the police actually got Jackie Foley's money specifically back. We haven't heard any foundation as to how Mr. Barrow would know that fact.
Response?
If I may, yes, Your Honor. Parker Barrow already testified that Jackie Foley came in with that deposit, that he stuffed the cash into the bag and handed it to the robbers, and then saw for himself that the police recovered that money. That's been stipulated to, Your Honor. There's not a lack of foundation here.
Anything lacking?
Your Honor, it has been stipulated, for one, that the money in that bag was actually Jackie Foley's cash, and there's no foundation that's been laid to indicate that Mr. Barrow would know that fact.
If I may, Your Honor.
Yes.
I apologize. The stipulation does say that money was recovered. I didn't mean to assert that it was Jackie Foley's money specifically. But, Your Honor, what we've heard was that Jackie Foley was in the process of depositing her money. Mr. Barrow put the money in the bag. Police showed up and recovered the money. There's not a lack of foundation here. This goes to weight, not admissibility.
Objection sustained. Lay more foundation.
Mr. Barrow, can you tell us what happened when the police arrived?
Sure. I mean, I'd been filling that bag of cash that the robbers asked me to fill with Jackie's money and the money in the drawer. So they uncovered that, they gave Jackie her money back, and they put the rest in the drawer.
Objection, Your Honor. Lack of foundation still to that last point as to how this witness would know that the police gave Jackie Foley's money specifically back to Ms. Foley. We actually heard from Ms. Foley, if I may, that she never got that cash back.
Response?
If I may, Your Honor, the witness is just testifying to what he saw, what he perceived. There's not a lack of foundation here.
Well, yes, one last one.
Your Honor, if they can lay the foundation that this witness was able to distinguish Jackie Foley's money from a bag of cash from anyone else's money, they're more than welcome to.
I think it's a close call, but the objection is sustained. I think you need to lay a foundation on that point.
Motion to strike, Your Honor.
I've ruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Barrow, without going into any specifics about what exact cash was put in and taken out of the bag, can you just tell us what happened when the police got there?
Sure. The police showed up, and they got the cash out of the bag. They arrested the robbers. I mean, I felt like I saved Jackie and I, and then I ended up here.
Prior to October 31st of 2017, had you ever heard anyone talk about any sort of plan to rob Third National Bank?
I think so, yeah.
Who do you think you heard say something like that?
My boss, Cassidy Sutton.
Mr. Barrow, before we talk about what Mr. Sutton said, Can you tell us what you were doing when you heard this?
Sure. We were doing the regular closing work for the night, so at this point we were counting down the drawers, getting a deposit ready for the vault, and Cassidy just looked down at all the money, and that's when he said it.
What did Mr. Sutton say when he was looking at this stacks of money?
He said, "I'm so poor, I might have to rob my own bank."
Objection, Your Honor, to hearsay. May I be heard?
Yes.
The last statement specifically, "I might have to rob my own bank," is hearsay under 801. We don't believe that it satisfies the requirements of 803.3, that it was a plan.
If I may, Your Honor?
Yes.
This statement does fall under an exception to hearsay, 803.3, Mr. Sutton's then existing mental state. Your Honor, 803.3 explicitly states that both intent and plan, statements involving intent and plan, fall under that exception. And Your Honor, when it comes to evidentiary matters in this jurisdiction, they only have to be proven by a preponderance of the evidence. Your Honor, in this case, when Mr. Sutton, the manager at Third National Bank, is staring at this money and says, "I might have to rob my own bank because I'm so poor," it's certainly more likely that that was his intent, or at least the beginning of a plan.
May I be heard? Your Honor, "I might have to rob my own bank" is not a statement of plan or intent. Now, as to that first portion, "I'm so poor," we agree that it meets the preponderance standard for motive under 803.3, but the remainder of that statement in no way meets the requirements of 803.3, Your Honor.
Anything further?
Your Honor, I maintain that it does fall under 803.3, an intent or plan.
Objection overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Barrow, I want to talk about access to Third National Bank. Are you aware of how many people have keys to unlock the place?
I know that Cassidy has his own key that he uses, and then he's given one to the security team and the cleaning crew, and then he has another one that he hands out to whoever's opening or closing the next day. So I guess I've seen 4.
Mr. Barrow, you mentioned a security team. I'd like to talk to you more about that. Earlier, when counsel came over and showed Mr. Worrell a copy of Exhibit 10, the photo of this woman, you had somewhat of a reaction to it. Can you share that with the members of the jury now?
Yeah, that's Dorothy. She was the head of this new security team that we got in July of last year.
Well, I'd like to clarify something then, because you've been in trial with us today.
Yes, ma'am.
Were you present? Did you hear Agent James testify about when he investigated the employees that worked for the security team at Third National?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you hear him say that that team was consisted of 3 males around the age of 20?
I did.
Mr. Barrow, is that description an accurate one of the security team Third National had prior to July of 2017?
Yes, ma'am, until the overhaul.
So did those 3 men around the age of 20 still work for the security team after July of 2017?
No, ma'am. Cassidy contracted out a different security company starting in July.
You told us that Cassidy was the one that contracted out the new security team. Are employees at the bank, other employees like yourself, ever notified of changes like that?
Yeah, generally when there's any kind of notice or any kind of change that's supposed to affect a lot of the staff, something like a security team, cleaning crew, things like that, the manager will just send out an email in the weekly updates.
Well, did you ever receive an email from Mr. Sutton around July of 2017 indicating that he had just hired a new security team?
No, ma'am. I never got that kind of email.
So I'd like to talk about exactly what you saw this woman, Dorothy, as you called her, do in July of 2017. What happened the first time?
Well, like I said, it was a complete overhaul. So since it was a new security team, they wanted to replace everything. We replaced the locks, the keys, the key cards to the vaults, security camera, alarm bars, all that different kind of stuff.
You mentioned that you replaced the security camera at Third National Bank. Were you involved in that process at all?
Yeah, Cassidy and I stayed late on a Saturday night to help Dorothy install everything. So we were passing around all the different equipment, handing her screwdrivers, helping her install some stuff, things like that.
And during this time of the security overhaul, do you remember if Dorothy was wearing a pair of gloves?
Yeah, Dorothy had gloves on. She said it was company policy.
Well, did you have gloves on?
No.
Mr. Barrow, this is important. Did you touch that security camera when the overhaul happened?
I don't know. Cassie and I were both touching a lot of equipment. I don't remember specifically touching the camera, but I don't know.
Did you ever see Dorothy come into the bank again?
Yeah. She actually came in a couple days before the robbery. It was the Saturday before, so the 28th.
What happened on the Saturday before the robbery?
Well, I walked into the back manager's office to ask Cassidy a question, and I saw her and Dorothy having a conversation.
Were they looking at anything during this conversation?
Yes, ma'am. They were looking at the footage of the lobby.
Did you hear anything?
Yeah. Right when I walked in, Cassidy asked Dorothy, is there any way that the security camera wouldn't cover the whole lobby? And then Dorothy said, no. Well, only if it's pointed upwards.
Mr. Barrow, were you interrogated by the FBI prior to trial today?
Yes, ma'am. The day after the robbery.
By who? Do you remember?
Agent James.
Did you ever tell Agent James in that interrogation that this woman, Dorothy, was a member of the bank's security team?
No, ma'am.
Did you ever tell him about the security overhaul that happened in July?
No.
What about the conversation between Dorothy and Mr. Sutton?
No, I didn't say anything.
Why?
I mean, when Agent James was asking me those questions, I had no idea that Dorothy was a suspect. He never showed me a picture of Dorothy. He never told me anything about the fact that Dorothy was a suspect.
Objection, Your Honor. Lack of foundation as to how Mr. Barrow would know that Dorothy was a suspect in today's case. In fact, we actually heard from the FBI agent who led the investigation, who stated that Dorothy wasn't a direct suspect in determining who was the insider in the bank.
Response?
If I may, Your Honor, yes. We've heard throughout trial today from the government's case that this woman, Dorothy Rose, as Floyd testified, that she was in some way involved in this robbery. Therefore, Mr. Barrow would have the knowledge to make that opinion, state that fact, rather.
Response?
Your Honor, we don't believe that Mr. Barrow has the knowledge to make that opinion, particularly because when we've been using the word suspect in today's case, it's referred to an insider on this crime. We don't believe that he has the foundation to make that statement.
Objection overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Barrow, why wouldn't you mention to Agent James anything you just told us about Dorothy?
Agent James never showed me that picture. I had no idea that Dorothy was a suspect. I didn't know that I was supposed to say anything about Dorothy. I thought that Cassidy had the bank's best interest in mind. I thought that they were talking about security. I don't know. I didn't say anything because Agent James didn't ask me anything about it.
Thank you, Mr. Barrow. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Thank you. The defendant is yours for cross-examination, Mr. Abbasi.
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to proceed.
You may.
Good evening, Mr. Barrow.
Good evening.
Sir, I want to talk about one of the regulars at your bank, okay?
Sure.
Now, one of your regulars is someone named Jackie Foley, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Every Tuesday at 11 a.m., Jackie Foley comes into your bank, right?
That's right.
Every Tuesday at 11 a.m., Jackie Foley brings you a red envelope filled with cash. Isn't that true?
Yes, sir.
And sir, you'd agreed that on most Tuesdays at 11 a.m., there are two employees of the bank, right?
That's right. Normally, Cassidy and I are in the bank together, but he left me alone that day.
So that's a yes, sir. There are usually two employees on Tuesdays at 11 a.m.
That's right.
There are usually two employees who can call the police if something goes wrong.
That's right.
There are usually two employees who can press that silent alarm, right?
Yes, and I was alone, but I did press the alarm.
Sir, last year in September, you learned that there'd be one day that'd be different, right?
Cassidy told me that he'd be out for a dentist appointment.
That's right, sir. In September, you learned that you'd be the only employee in the bank on October 31st, right?
That's right.
You knew for over a month before the robbery that you'd be the only employee in the bank on October 31st.
Sure. Cassidy told me he'd be leaving me alone in mid-September.
So that's a yes, sir.
Like I said.
And it was on October 30th that two robbers walked into your bank on the one time that you were alone, right?
No, sir.
Sir, is it your testimony that wasn't the one time you were alone in the branch?
I think you got the dates mixed up, sir. I thought you said October 30th. The robbery happened on the 31st.
I apologize.
Yes, sir.
So on October 31st, that was the one day that you were alone in the bank, right?
That's right, while the bank was open.
So, sir, I want to talk about your bank security system, starting with the security camera that you mentioned on direct examination.
Sure.
Now, you know today that the security camera was pointed at the ceiling during the robbery, right?
That's right. Agent James told me about that after the robbery occurred.
Agent James asked you about that security camera, right?
Yes, sir.
He asked, you ever adjusted the security camera?
That's right.
You told him, I know which camera you're talking about.
Yes, sir.
You said that camera's about 12 feet off the ground.
That's right. It captures the whole lobby.
So that's a yes. It's about 12 feet off the ground.
Yes, sir.
You said, I don't think I've ever touched that camera at all, right?
That's right. I don't think I have.
But sir,
I don't know.
You'd agree that you have touched that camera before, isn't that true?
Sir, I don't know. I mean, I know Agent James found my fingerprint on the camera, so maybe I did when I was helping Dorothy install that stuff, but I really don't remember. I'm sorry.
Well, let's be clear, Mr. Barrow. Yes or no? You heard Agent James testify that your fingerprint was on that camera.
Like I said, sir.
Well, you also heard Agent James testify about security footage taken by that camera, right?
That's right. He said there was none.
Well, sir, you heard that on October 30th, that camera was moved at 6:05 p.m., right?
Yes, sir.
Sir, you'd agree that you were in Third National Bank at 6:05 p.m. that day.
Right, I was in the manager's office doing some paperwork.
So, sir, that's a yes. You were in the bank at 6:05 p.m. on October 30th.
Yes, sir, in the manager's office.
So, sir, I want to talk about how someone could have reached that security camera 12 feet off the ground. You'd agree that Agent James asked you about a yellow ladder in the bank, right?
That's right.
Agent James asked you ever used the yellow ladder in the bank?
Right, and I've never used it.
Well, that's right, sir. You said what ladder, right?
That's right.
You said no.
I said that I'd never used it. It sits in our storage closet, and I probably moved it out of the way to grab some deposit slips or something, but...
Sir, you specifically said what ladder? No.
That's right, and then I told Agent James that I've never used a ladder.
Well, sir, you'd agree that you actually knew about that ladder he was talking about, right?
When he first asked me the question, it didn't come to mind. I mean, I've never used it. It just sits in the security closet. But when I went in there and I thought about it a little bit more, a couple questions, I remembered that I probably have touched it at some point to grab some security deposits.
Yes or no? You heard Agent James testify that your fingerprint was on that yellow ladder.
Yes, sir.
So, sir, we talked about your security camera. I want to talk about a second security defense at that bank.
Sure.
The silent alarm, okay?
Okay.
Now, sir, you'd agree that there's a silent alarm that sits right under your teller counter at the bank, right?
That's right.
On October 31st, sir, you believed that you could call the police by activating that alarm, right?
Right, that's why I did.
And sir, you believed on October 31st that to activate that alarm, all they had to do was press it with your foot, right?
Right, again, that's why I did.
Well, you'd agree that Agent James asked you if you did, right?
That's right.
And he told him the same thing, that you activated that alarm, right?
Yes, sir.
But sir, you'd agree you didn't activate that alarm, did you?
I did activate the alarm, sir. The local police showed up and they turned off the alarm once they got there, but I'd activated it.
Mr. Barrow, yes or no? You heard Agent James testify that the alarm had not been activated.
Yes, Agent James was mistaken.
Sir, but that's a yes to my question. You heard Agent James testify.
Objection asked and answered, Your Honor.
I'll allow it. It's cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Sir, yes or no? You heard Agent James testify that the alarm had not been activated.
Like I've been saying.
So we talked about your bank security system. I want to talk about that red envelope you mentioned earlier from Jackie Foley, okay?
Sure.
Now, at 11 a.m. on the day of the robbery, like you said, Jackie Foley handed you that envelope, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, sir, you told the FBI that he gave that envelope to the robbers, right?
No, sir, I took the cash out of the envelope and I gave that to them.
Sir, is your testimony that you didn't tell the FBI that you gave them that red envelope specifically to the robbers?
I mean, I might have given them the envelope. I remember giving them the cash that was in the bag.
Sir, might you have or did you?
Honestly, I don't remember, sir. I might have given them the envelope. There was a lot going on that day.
All right, sir. Well, let's be clear. Yes or no, Mr. Barrow, you heard Agent James testify that he never found that red envelope on either of the robbers.
That's right.
You also heard Charlie Floyd testify, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes or no, Mr. Barrow, you heard Charlie Floyd testify that she never got that envelope back.
That's right.
She never saw the other robber get that envelope.
I don't think she said that.
Well, sir, you'd agree that she never said that she saw the envelope from the defendant, from you rather, to either of the robbers, right?
I mean, what she said was that she was pretty distracted during the robbery, making sure Jackie Foley was remaining calm, and I was giving the money to Magenta.
Well,
I probably gave Magenta the envelope.
You also heard Jackie Foley testify today, right?
Yes, sir.
You heard Jackie Foley testify, yes or no, that she never saw you give that red envelope to the robbers.
Sir, she said she closed her eyes, so no, she didn't see it.
So, sir, that's a yes. You heard that she never testified that she gave that envelope, or rather that she saw you give that envelope to the robbers.
Yes, I guess that's correct.